Why is there discrimination? What is the motive behind it? Does it come naturally to us? Let's start. Discrimination is inherent in human beings. Since we were born with the strong idea that we are individuals, that everything revolves around us. Within myself, there is me and the rest. This great differentiation unconsciously generates a division in the perception of what we understand. Human thought is capable of fragmenting the world around us, and of differentiating, distinguishing and dividing everything into elements. In this way we can differentiate a person by skin color, origin, gender, culture, language. We have the ability to notice patterns in nature, such as differentiating day from night, before from after, man from woman, or child from adult. We also have the ability to generate definitions and conceptualize everything. We differentiate good from bad, right from wrong, and natural from artificial. This ability in itself is extraordinary, because no life form other than ourselves has such a high level of classification. We can know all the parts that make up a plant, what function it has, how it arises, its relationship with the environment. We know a great deal about the mechanism of the human body, the organs that compose it, detect and correct its malfunctioning. This is how medicine was discovered. All this arises from the ability to observe, analyze, perceive processes, classify, study and understand them. For the human being, it is essential to differentiate man from woman, the concept of gender, to understand their physiological differences. A woman has the ability to create a physical environment, which allows to reproduce another human being inside her. It is purely extraordinary. It is important to know the details of everything. So far we can observe the great potential of human thought. But on the other hand, we have the psychological core, which each of us has. The idea of the individual, and the importance that each one of us has within our own world. The most important thing in my life is me, and the same happens in you. You are the most important thing in your life. There is me and the rest, and in your case, there is you and the rest. Of course you can tell me that the most important thing in your life is your children, or your passion for animals, or whatever is essential in your life. But that thing, the most important thing for you, is what you feel. That idea comes from yourself, and for yourself. Because you are you, you feel that. You would give your life for your children. But the main thing is yourself. That's why there is the opportunity to feel that you would give your life for them. If you were not there, there would not be that feeling inside you. It is very subtle, but it is so. We are the most important element of our life. And from there, we have fundamental priorities, which exist because we exist. It is as if we are each the earth. And because of it, nature and life exist. As I exist, there are my passions, my feelings, and love or hate towards others. In essence, we feel special. Each one of us in our own being feels special, feels indispensable and unique. If one is not there, there is no world to look at, and in the social relationship, we measure that importance, comparing ourselves with others. We are like small universes in relationship. Now, when we join this great capacity that thought offers us, with this idea of the individual, it is when conflicts are generated, and it is when the concept of self-esteem appears. That emotional level of self-confidence. Feeling good, useful, valid, as opposed to feeling inferior, isolated, alone, useless. This self-esteem can be fed, unfortunately, from several different sources. I can do important work for the world, from discovering a drug for a disease, or saving the life of an animal, or offering help to a person in need. It raises your self-esteem, it fulfills you as a person. You feel useful and satisfied that you have done the right thing. But you can also belong to a racial ideology. Believe that your physiological or intellectual characteristics are what they should be and feel superior to another person who has a different skin color. or a different culture or country, or even belong to a certain gender. That also raises self-esteem, feeling superior to the rest just for the fact of believing that it is so. That is the seed of discrimination. Taking any characteristic and making it serve to feed that need for self-esteem, to make you feel more special. And this is where an infinite number of situations come in. It can be for having a big or small nose, ears, lacking certain physical or psychological validity, social or economic level, belonging to a culture, tradition or religion, skin color, gender, ideas, or beliefs. Anything is susceptible to be used as a comparison and to feel good about oneself at the expense of discriminating against other people's characteristics. It is as if self-esteem were money. I can get rich by stealing from others, or by working hard for myself. Discrimination makes a person feel special, at the cost of creating inferiority in others, feeling included on the basis of exclusion. So I treat you differently. I treat that characteristic as inferior to mine. This game of egos is such a frequent mechanism in us. Take any characteristic and use it to raise that self-esteem. That reinforces us, and even more if we belong to a group in which I can enter and you cannot. It happens at school, in high school, in the group of friends, in the family, in the street, and in the whole society. Even physical and psychological abuse has its beginning in discrimination based on violence, and generating it by force. It is curious if we reflect on it. Envy, for example, is perhaps a process of self-discrimination. To feel envy because you are rich and I am not, produces comparison and affects self-esteem, self-exclusion consciously and emotionally. After all, discrimination arises from the context of inequality. And inequality only appears when there is comparison. And comparison or inequality is not good or bad in itself. It is always within a context. A tiger and a turtle are equal. Within the context that they are animals, they are the same. But a tiger and a tortoise are not equal, in terms of reproduction model. One is viviparous and the other is oviparous. There is equality because they belong to the same kingdom of animals, but there is inequality in terms of reproduction. Pure taxonomy. There is nothing wrong in classifying for pure knowledge of life, of reality, of the universe. Imagine that a tiger discriminates against a turtle because it lays eggs. Well, that nonsense, that which we would see as absurd, is what we do constantly. Our ability to perceive differences in everything we see is so strong that we cannot help but use it to classify. And using that ability to feed ourselves emotionally, to compare ourselves, and to highlight one characteristic against another, that is known as discrimination. You can just think about it, and not have that behavior outwardly. Or you can have that attitude and treat someone or a group differently than you would if you weren't aware or didn't make a distinction of that discriminatory factor. I have seen that many times. You meet someone, you talk about it, and well, then you find out that this person, for example, is homosexual, and you think, wow, how should I behave with this person? Neither for good nor for bad. You just wonder because look, as if you have to act differently just because of that. This is not discrimination. It is the evidence that we take into account the differences between one and the other. Between some characteristics and others, some tendencies, ideas, ways of thinking. We have in our heads all the social stereotypes that are created. We all have prejudices. We compare ourselves to each other. We tell ourselves that we belong to certain groups, even unconsciously. What if I am a man, I am heterosexual, middle class, Spanish, English, Christian, Buddhist? We categorize ourselves, and others. And from that catalog, from those characteristics, if I use them to feed my ego, my self-esteem, believing that mine is better, there is a problem. Because in reality we are vulnerable. We all have material, physical, social, emotional deficiencies, and we need psychological support. There is a void that we fill with all that to not feel lost and to impose our authenticity and that sense of being special. Those clashes between one and the other, That comparing all that I am and what you are to fill me emotionally at the expense of the differences and let the world know is discrimination. But all this is what we allow ourselves with this basic education as human beings. Inequality exists since we are aware that we have this ability to distinguish things and compare them. And that need to constantly feed the ego through self-esteem. All that psychological mix generates all the conflicts in the world. The mind, or call it whatever you want, is a really very complex process. And because of not understanding all the mechanisms that take place here, in the head, we do not use thought, consciousness, knowledge or feelings in the right way. We incur in such a repeated and constant misuse that we do not know how the human being should really work, how to look at life, how to respect ourselves and the rest. That is the key to everything. Is there really an I and the rest? That idea is so strong. It is so ingrained in us for thousands of years. It seems so obvious, the idea of the individual, that it seems that we really see it, that it is an absolute truth. That is why from the moment we are born, we are taught above all things that we are an individual separate from the rest of the universe. And that life is processed and managed from that psychological core we call the self. Creating that idea is the beginning of inequality. I am not the same as the rest. Do you think that this idea of self is a reality, or a belief that we take as real? See you next time.